What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the best optics for each type of weapon and also console versus PC and different FOV values, as well as covering a new tool that I developed for True Game Data. That's what this tweet was about. I said I'm in danger of going way over the top again. And yeah, that's exactly what I did, which was, I didn't expect it to take as long as it did. I wanted to get this all done by like 4 p.m. yesterday, including this video. But what ended up happening is the programming just took way longer than I expected, as usual. So unfortunately, I wasted the whole day on something that nobody even asked for. But hopefully some of you think it's interesting and useful. It can also eventually turn into maybe like an effective recoil calculator, but we'll cover that as we get into it. As always, if you guys like the content, please consider liking the video and dropping a comment to help us out with the algorithm. And if you want to see more content, super in-depth content, nobody else really is doing the things I'm doing, please drop a sub and we'll jump into it here and talk about the best optics for all the different situations. So in the past, I've made videos on what I thought were the best optics for console, and that came about because of the differences in the FOV settings. So on console, you're locked to 80 FOV, which is exactly the same as on PC when you have a high FOV number and you put your FOV setting on independent. If you ADS on independent, it's the same as ADSing at 80 FOV, which is on console. So that was a good thought, and it was true, all the things I said in those videos about effective recoil and stuff like that, how the more zoom you have, essentially the more recoil you have to correct for, because if you think about it, if you're zoomed in 3 times as much, the amount the recoil would climb on the wall when you're zoomed in visually 3 times as much is 3 times as high, even though the wall pattern's the same. The amount you'd have to move your mouse to correct for that amount of recoil would be 3 times higher. So it basically increases the recoil if you increase zoom. So all of these console players were using the VLK 3X, which was like just a little bit more zoom than a red dot sight on console. So they're seeing all these streamers use the VLK, so they try to use the VLK, but really what they're doing is giving themselves way more effective recoil by doing that because they have so much extra zoom with the VLK when they're on 80 FOV. So I tried to clarify all that in my previous videos, and I'm going to try to do a good job explaining that in this video as well. This video is going to be more focused on this new tool that I built on True Game Data to help you guys understand how much zoom you're getting compared to streamers. There's a lot of things to factor into that. Basically, I'm going to go into actually like showing you some measurements and things, but what determines how big your target is on your screen? How much zoom you have on your optic, your FOV setting, whether or not you're independent or affected, your actual FOV number if you're unaffected, the actual distance to the target, distance to your monitor matters. So all these things are factored in. There's a million different things to consider, and I built a calculator that'll actually show you the angle of which your view is to measure the height of a target at a certain distance based on how far you are from your monitor, your FOV, the size of your monitor, all these different things. And I put that on True Game Data. Again, I didn't intend it to be as complicated and take as long as it did. I wanted to work on the damage rework, which is still very close, but hopefully it's still a useful tool, and eventually I'll be able to turn it into something that's like an effective recoil calculator for all the different optics in the game. But I want to go into that now and explain how it works and kind of explain what I mean by this angle and all of that. All right, so this is the calculator first. I'm going to go over how it works and how you guys can use it to compare to what a streamer would see. Basically, it's truegamedata.com/zoom_calculator.php. I'll link it in the video, obviously, and probably pin a comment with it as well. How it works is you can just select your different options here. You play on affected ADS setting or independent. If you're on console, you're independent. Then you choose your unit. So either imperial or metric. It'll be feet and inches or meters and centimeters. So I'm going to do independent, imperial, and I'm going to name this console FOV 5 feet from the TV, and let's say 50-inch TV. So that's what I'm going to name it, and then I'm going to put it in 50 inches and say that I'm 5 feet from the TV. So I enter 5 feet there, and I calculate. And what this does is it calculates this new column here. So these are the optics on the left that I measured. So we have hipfire, SMG iron sights, SMG red dot sight, SMG red dot sight on the 2.5x hybrid. So you know the 2.5x hybrid has a red dot sight. Turns out that has different zoom in some cases than the regular red dot. So I included it here. AR and LMG iron sights actually have slightly different zoom than SMG iron sights. AR LMG red dot, AR LMG red dot on the 2.5x. This is where what I just talked about comes into play. Talk about that individually at some point during this video. And then red dot sights that are 1.5x. So this is Vanguard optics specifically. So the optics that say they're 1.5x, that's what this is. The G2.5x is a really popular attachment. and then 3x on the 3 to 6x optic, 6x on the 3 to 6x optic, and 4x on the 4 to 8x optic, and 8x on the 4 to 8x optic. So you get the angle of view that you would measure from your eyeball to see that based on your inputs for all these different things, and you can compare. And what you want to do is you want to try to find an optic for your specific setup that you enter that matches roughly what you see streamers using. So these are streamers' approximate angles. These are my angles based on my monitor size, my different distance from my monitor, my FOV settings, everything like that. So if you look at this, my approximate angle for the 3x on the on an AR or SMG is 9.4 degrees. So that means that from the top of a target to the bottom of a target who's standing 15 meters away from me on my screen, if I use that optic, that angle between those two, the top of the person and the bottom of the person, would be 9.4 degrees. So if say you were playing on console, you're 5 feet from your TV and you're on a 50-inch screen, now you want to look at these angles and say, okay, well, Mr. Streamer Man Tony is seeing 9.4 degrees. That's how big the guy is. That's how easy it is for him to see him. So I want to find an optic that basically matches what he has in terms of angle. So if you were to do that with this setting, the closest you could get would be this 9.8 on the G2.5X. So the G2.5X, if this was your setup, would make your target on the screen roughly the same size as what I'm seeing, the perceived size of the target. All right, this is a really confusing thing to try to explain with words, so I'm going to try to explain it using my tablet. So basically, we're going to go to class now. If you guys brought your notepad, I hope you're ready to take notes. But anyway, so the first thing that determines how big a person is to your visual perspective would be FOV. So for example, you've got two screen sizes, they're the same. I'm going to say this is two different screens just with the line down the middle. Obviously, if you have higher FOV, so say this is 120 FOV and this is 80 FOV, then your dude's going to be huge on this screen, but on this screen he'll be tiny because you're more zoomed out with a higher FOV. So that's the first thing that affects how big someone is. The next thing that would affect how large someone appeared to your eye would be screen size, obviously. If you have a tiny screen, but that tiny screen is 120 FOV, and then you have a massive screen in the same distance from your eye, and you're still 120 FOV, then that dude is going to be bigger. He's going to be proportionally bigger based on how much bigger the screen size is. So the next thing that matters would be how far you are from that screen or monitor or TV. So say you've got two screens that are exactly the same size, but in one case you're much closer to it than the other. So we'll draw, say this is a screen sideways. I'm not really going to draw the actual screen, but that's your screen. And then we'll draw the same screen, but closer. And you're standing over here and you're looking that way. So say that this is 2 meters and this is 1 meter. The angle, this is the angle I'm talking about that would determine the size of what that looked like to you. So this angle, the inner angle for the TV that's further away, is going to be much smaller. So the further the TV away is, the smaller the object appears to you. And again, that's roughly proportional to that distance. So if you're twice as close, it's going to be roughly twice as big until you get really close. Then it starts getting wonky. But in the middle ground, it's usually roughly equivalent to that. So this bigger angle, obviously alpha 2, is going to be, you know, a lot bigger. The object on that screen is going to look bigger to your eye perceived than the one that's further away. And then obviously how much zoom your optic has determines how big the target is on the screen as well. So that matters. So like, for example, if you use a 1x optic, same screen size, same everything else, just draw two equivalent screens here. Left side's using a red dot sight and right side's using like a 4x optic. So the left side, you'd have, you know, your little red dot with the dot in the middle, and your dude's going to be like this tall. Right side, we've got, you know, your 3x optic with the T-pose. Obviously, you're going to be way more zoomed in with that. So the dude's going to be much bigger in your optic. And that's just one of the other factors. So there's all these different factors that go into this, and this page that I built on True Game Data calculates that all for you based on your specific inputs and allows you to find exactly what the ideal zoom amount would be for you compared to what the streamers have. And I just, again, I did not intend for this to be this complicated or this detailed. I just kind of went over the deep end, and once I got into it, it was like, well, I've sunk so much time into this now. Is it worth just throwing away and just making a video and telling people to use this optic, or should I just keep going? and it just felt stupid to give up all the work I'd already done, so I just finished it. But I did finish it in a day, so getting the video out today, and then we'll dive back into working really hard on the damage rework today. So now that I've gone through step by step explaining what each different thing that determines size is and how it works, this is the final explanation of how this works. So basically, the calculator will take all your inputs for screen size, distance, all of that, and it will calculate the angle from your eye to the target on the screen, the top, the bottom of that target. And that is going to be at 15 meters in game. So the distance to the target in game obviously also matters. So all of these measurements are 15 meters. That's completely arbitrary. It doesn't matter. The thing that matters is the comparison of the angles for the distance you are to the screen. So it's just, it is measured from a 15 meter away target, but that doesn't actually matter that much. So that's what it does. It calculates all of that for you, and you compare to what a streamer would see from your current setup based on your monitor, your FOV settings, everything. Way too in depth. But again, I think I can reuse this for effective recoil based on the amount of zoom that you have later on when I actually get to programming that. But yeah, kind of embarrassing. Didn't mean to go this overboard, but I hope you guys enjoy it. So all that out of the way, a lot of people just come to my videos for recommendations. A lot of you do like the detailed explanations as well, which is why the website exists. You like to figure things out for yourself. It's kind of this weird dynamic where a lot of people come just to get the loadout recommendations, but also a lot of people like to have the full detailed explanation of why I chose what I chose. But basically, I gave you the tool to go figure out which optic might be the best one for you to use. But now I'm going to talk about individual cases and what I think people should actually use. So if you're on PC, it's pretty much, I mean, if you're on PC, high FOV with affected, it's pretty much the SVT 3 to 6x. This gives you the 3x, which is basically like the VLK optic, which obviously was super popular for a reason. It's below that 3.25x threshold to make it have much less zoom when you're on affected and much easier to manage. It also has the option to switch to 6x, which gives you tons of zoom if you ever need that for a certain situation. So it's pretty much that one. The night vision scope gets an honorable mention. It's also a 3x. And Caldera, it's kind of hard to see people sometimes, but if they're running cold-blooded, you can still kind of see them with this optic. But overall, it's a good option as well. None of the other ones really make much sense for long range, but I do want to talk about some specific close range things later on in the video. But for now, that's what we're going to talk about there. If you're on console, pretty much I think you should be using a 1.5x red dot sight. So there's all kinds of different options. I'm not going to tell you to use a specific one. There's a bunch of these, all these like sun filters are all 1.5x. If they say 1.5x, basically that's going to give you a little bit more zoom if you're on console than a PC player would get with the 3x on the 3 to 6x. So it's going to give you a little bit more zoom, but most likely if you're on console on a TV, you're probably further from your TV than the equivalent distance that the streamer is from their monitor. So that little bit of extra zoom might actually be nice, able to see your target a little bit better because you're further from your TV. If you want more zoom, obviously the G2.5x is great. This is a really good optic as well, but that's going to be a lot of zoom, which is going to give you a lot of effective recoil, which again, that's going to probably be a future video. I'll go back over this calculator I built and make it work with effective recoils in terms of how much recoil you have to correct for because of how much zoom you have, and how the optic affects the recoil itself. But yeah, I think if you're on console, 1.5x is probably usually the way to go. Another optic I want to talk about is the 2.5x hybrid. So this is a red dot sight on top and a 2.5x inside. This is unique in that I said there's a difference in zoom between an SMG and an AR, and that's true with iron sights and red dot sights. But for some reason, the red dot sight on the 2.5x hybrid gives an AR the same ADS zoom as an iron sight SMG. So you get less zoom than a normal red dot sight, which is actually what you want for an SMG. So if you're ever running an AR as an SMG, this optic is potentially really good. Another case that's really good for this optic actually is on an SMG. So there's certain SMGs from World War II that have magazines that stick up and get in the way. So if you're running the Owen gun, which is one of the best guns in the game, and you put one of these drum magazines on it, I'll show you guys this in game, but that gets in the way of your view. So if what you do is you put this 2.5x optic on there, this 2.5x hybrid, and what it does is when you swap to the red dot sight, all of a sudden your view is shifted above that big magazine that was in your way normally. So we'll hop in a game and I'll show you what that actually looks like, but that's actually a really nice advantage. All right, so I hopped in a plunder match here just to show you guys the difference. I've got two assault rifles, one with a regular red dot sight and one with that hybrid red dot sight. I just want to show you the difference in zoom real quick. So I'll land over here. Basically what I'll do is I will take the bar, which has the regular red dot, and I'll ADS and put the side of the screen. So look at the left edge of the screen here. and you can see I've got that tree right on the left edge of the screen. Now I'll swap over to the 2.5x and then zoom out into the regular red dot, and you can see that's dramatically less zoom than a regular red dot has. So if you're ever using an AR as an SMG, a Vanguard AR as an SMG, I think it might be worth using this optic just to get more zoomed out, more zoomed out sight picture when you're using the optic, which is really, really nice for up close tracking. That's why most people play unaffected on PC, is because the up close tracking is a lot better. It's actually worse at range than independent for long range engagements, just because it's harder to see the person. But it does also help with effective recoil, but that's beside the point. I just wanted to show you the difference between those two red dot sights. All right, we're dropping in with the Owen gun with one of those barrel mags on the side. I want to show you guys the difference in these two optics. So this is what it looks like with a regular red dot. You can see that mag really obstructs your view on the right side. But if I swap over and change this to the 2.5x, and then I swap it to the second option on the hybrid, you can see that I have a way better sight picture of my target. It's not in the way anymore at all. So I think for the Owen gun, this might be the meta optic. It will hurt your ADS time some compared to using a regular red dot, but I think it's completely worth it for having so much better visibility of the target. All right, guys, that's everything I wanted to cover. Again, the link to that page where you can go calculate your angles will be in the video description and down below in the comments. I went way overboard with this video. I didn't intend to. I've been getting a lot of tweets from people saying, why are you working on this stuff when you don't even have the damage stuff finished yet? I'm like, I didn't intend to. I literally thought this was going to take an hour, but it ended up taking all day, because that just happens sometimes. The actual calculations were confusing. The programming took a lot longer than I thought, but really it was the calculations. The calculations were very confusing, and I had to go in and build like a table of different FOVs and different optics so I can like map to those values and interpolate between them. And it was complicated, to say the least. It was complicated. I didn't expect it to be. So that's why I wasted a whole day on it. I think the damage rework is 2 or 3 days of full work out, and that's what I'm doing all day today after I publish this video. So we will have that out as soon as possible. But thank you guys so much for watching and helping to support True Game Data. I'm super thankful to be working on this stuff, and I appreciate each and every one of you for watching my videos and helping to support in any way. But yeah, that's all I wanted to cover, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.